What if the person sleeping next to you wasn't just cheating, but rehearsing your life like a role, down to your signature, your limp, and the way you say appreciate you to strangers? That's not heartbreak. That's premeditation. Welcome to the Justice Vault, where we don't just tell betrayal stories. We break down how ordinary routines become evidence, how trust gets weaponized, and how the truth always leaves a paper trail. Today's story follows Darius Cole, a Baltimore contract compliance investigator who spends his career catching fraud, until he gets the kind of phone call that turns your stomach cold. A bank employee tells him his wife is sitting in a branch with a man who looks exactly like him, using his name, his ID, and his signature to pull tens of thousands from a joint account. At first it sounds ridiculous. So ridiculous your brain wants to laugh just to buy itself a second. But then the details start stacking up. His date of birth, his security answers, the practiced handwriting on the withdrawal slip, and the teller's instinct that something about the performance is too calm. Darius tells the bank to stall, calls police from an airport rideshare, and texts his wife, who replies too fast, too vague, like she's answering from a hallway, with one ear listening for trouble. By the time he lands, the misunderstanding has already been detained. His wife, Nia, and Curtis Vale, a man carrying a Maryland license with Darius's name and a face similar enough to pass at a glance, right down to a notch in an eyebrow. At the station, the case stops being scandal and becomes something uglier. Investigators show Darius the evidence bag, then the duffel bag, utility bills from his house, salary printouts, screenshots from his wife's social media, and a yellow legal pad full of notes, studying him like an actor studies a character. How he walks, how he signs, what he says to service staff, where he places his left hand on the counter. And when Darius learns his wife wasn't just present but actively coaching Curtis at the bank, don't overtalk, keep your left hand here, mention the Cleveland conference if they ask, the marriage doesn't simply crack. It detonates. Back home, Nia sits at the kitchen table wearing one of his hoodies like comfort can be borrowed from the person you're betraying, with an aunt nearby as a pre-selected witness. She tries the classic line, "It's not what it looks like," but the lies don't hold up against specifics, and when Darius repeats what police and tellers recorded, her face doesn't shift into remorse, it shifts into irritation. She reaches for a different defense. Blame. "You're never here," she tells him, trying to drag the conversation into marital neglect, like emotional distance can downgrade felony fraud into a relationship issue. But Darius refuses to let categories blur. Loneliness can be real, he admits, but it isn't a license, and identity theft isn't a love language. He freezes credit, changes passwords, starts documenting everything, and moves to the basement where his Sunday hobby, restoring old radios, suddenly feels symbolic, bringing dead things back with patience and wire, except this time the dead thing is trust, and it's not coming back. That night he remembers a detail that reframes the last 8 months. Nia once asked him to sign a blank page, to compare pens for holiday cards, and she kept it. At the time it felt quirky. Now it feels like rehearsal. Betrayal has a way of editing old memories without asking permission. The next day, Darius watches bank footage. Nia standing beside Curtis with a guiding hand on his forearm, correcting posture like a dance instructor, smiling at managers while the branch stalls the withdrawal. The performance is intimate in the worst way, because it uses familiarity. Then comes the legal shift. A family law attorney tells Darius the truth that changes everything. This isn't just infidelity, it's collaboration, and collaboration raises the legal temperature. Investigators interview Curtis, and the story gets darker. The affair started months earlier, and Curtis admits the original plan was small, a credit line, a quiet scam, until Nia scaled it up, feeding him travel calendars, IDs, anniversary photos, church videos, even a recorded voice clip so he could mimic Darius's cadence. If you're still here, and this story has you replaying every small red flag you've ever ignored, tap like. It tells me you want more cases where the truth isn't just shocking, it's instructive. As the weeks unfold, the damage spreads like ink in water. Credit inquiries in other states, rejected apartment applications in his name, prepaid phone accounts, and the slow humiliation of spending lunch breaks on hold with fraud apartments while still packing his daughter Samara's school lunches at night. That's the part nobody glamorizes. Catastrophe still requires chores. The trash still smells by Wednesday. Your kid still has algebra homework. Even your grief has to wait for pickup time. Then police trace a charge Darius flagged to a climate-controlled storage unit rented under Nia's work email. Inside, rolling suitcases, a fireproof document box, travel printouts, and the kind of future planning you don't do by accident. Matching luggage isn't confusion. It's intent. The evidence forces a hard question. How far would Darius push punishment versus protection? Prison sounds satisfying in the quiet hours, but he keeps seeing his daughter carrying that weight into every school form and holiday. He doesn't confuse restraint with weakness. He chooses strategy over spectacle, records, boundaries, therapy, and court motions that lock down assets and prioritize parental stability. Then the story complicates itself, the way real life always does. Darius finds an old notebook of Nia's, written before Curtis, full of grocery lists, prayers, and a lonely truth. Nights when he came home after their daughter slept, moments when she felt invisible, attempts to become useful enough to be noticed. It doesn't excuse the crime, but it explains the soil where resentment grew. Therapy forces Darius to hold two truths at once. Nia was lonely, and Nia still chose something cruel. Not an affair. A scheme. A double. A man trained to wear her husband's identity like a suit. In court, the performance finally dies. Documentation wins. The judge doesn't need outrage. The record speaks. Nia receives probation, restitution, community service, and a felony record. Curtis, with prior history, gets prison. Darius keeps the house and primary custody, not because he won, but because dissipation and fraud have consequences. And still, the victory feels hollow on the courthouse steps because consequences aren't cinematic. They're administrative. Receipts. Restricted opportunities. Awkward school concerts. Opening mail with adrenaline. Time passes. Life rebuilds in quiet repairs. Darius stops answering work emails after 7, takes Samara to Lexington Market on Saturdays, returns to church drumming once a month, relearns the difference between endurance and love. Nia eventually sends an email that sounds more like accountability than performance. Less forgive me and more, I finally see what I did to our child's trust. At an orchestra concert, she says something Darius can respect because it doesn't demand anything from him. She doesn't ask for relief before repair. Curtis writes once from prison too, admitting that becoming someone stable felt easier than becoming himself. Darius doesn't reply. Some doors don't need slamming. They just need staying closed. And that's the final lesson he leaves behind. Real strength doesn't look like public revenge. It looks like discipline with money, with speech, with wounded pride, with boundaries that don't bend just because someone cries while breaking them. If you're asking where it really went wrong, Darius doesn't point to the bank, or even the affair. He points earlier, when silence became normal, when routine dressed itself up as stability, when loneliness went underground instead of being spoken out loud. But he draws the line that saved his spine. He can own his distance without carrying her deceit. Because marriage problems don't justify crimes, and heartbreak doesn't erase intent. The bank called and said his wife was there with a man who looked just like him. In the end, that man didn't steal Darius's life. The masks just forced everyone to show their real face. If you want more deep dives where betrayal meets investigation and every twist has real-world consequences, subscribe to the Justice Vault, like this video, and share it with others. And in the comments, tell me this. What's the biggest lesson you're taking from Darius's story? Boundaries, attention to practical red flags, or refusing to let pain make you reckless?